Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Media Show on the Pod TV Network. I'm Nick Palavine. I'll be one of your hosts for today, but we're going to bring in the other host who has 100 years experience in the media area, who has a degree in journalism from Marquette University, Mark Lee. And of course, we have some exciting things to talk about in media because it looks like we've had the latest thing, which is Trump's putting tariffs on the media. So
Sure.
tell us
Yeah.
what's going on with that.
Trump is putting tariffs on the foreign film industry. So he's they're saying 100%. If you're making a film in Spain, if you're making a film in Britain, matter of fact, we got to talk to our young ladies from Spain that live in Miami to see what their reaction is to this. So hopefully they'll be coming and doing a show with us in the near future. But definitely that is one of the conversation points is what's going on in that sense. And we've actually joined by a gentleman from the media who's done a lot of stuff in the media, and we've not seen him for a while, even though he's got a show here on the network. But he is a man from the military and all along those lines. So it's been a minute since we've seen Chris Greco, and glad to see Chris in the house and everything like that. So Chris, one of the things that we're talking about is this notion of the tariffs and everything like that. So I know Trump's been doing tariffs, and apparently he's got a tariffs on the foreign film industry and all in that space. So your thoughts on this notion of the tariffs that he wants to place on foreign films? So if you're a fan of art house films, whether it's from France or the Hollywood or Bollywood, that'd be more Bollywood, India, and stuff like that. So what's your take on these tariffs on the film industry? Because he said 100%.
You know, interestingly enough, I just finished watching Reacher, right? The new season of Reacher. I love. I've read all the guy's books, and I even predicted. I said the next one's going to be Persuader. By God, it was, and they did a great job. Except when I found out that the entire film of Reacher, including season 1 and season 2, were filmed in Toronto or Canadian area. And I'm sitting back going, geez, this is really interesting. Canada is sitting back saying, look what you're doing to us. I don't understand why you're doing this to us. And I sit back and I go, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You're getting the film, you're getting film industry up in Canada because for whatever reason, it's either cheaper or there's less union aspects or whatever it is that Hollywood has decided they're going to go now to Canada. Canada has shows. DIY HGTV has tons. I shouldn't say tons. That's a Trumpism. Tons, huge. Everything is fantastically. That's not. It isn't tons, but they have several shows that are filmed up in Toronto that include $1 million homes. And I sit back and I go, well, it's very evident to me that the Canadians are doing very well, and they are. There, and NAFTA was part of that. The NAFTA agreement really made Canada a major competition where they weren't in competition with us in the past. So it's interesting to see all those different things happening. And Trump is trying to, it's interesting. We used to call, when I worked for the federal government, we used to call people like Trump and the political appointees, which is what they were. We used to call them bucket leaders. So what you do is you get a bucket of water, right? And you put your hand in the bucket of water and you swish all around. And this is what they do for the next year. Swish it, water going everywhere. And they switch it. And then guess what happens when they leave? They leave, the hand comes out of the bucket of water. And what does the bucket of water do? It goes right back the way it was. And that's exactly what happens with all these political appointees. And they go in there and they want to make a difference right now. And then they realize that the government is kind of like a big aircraft carrier. It takes 5 miles to turn the thing, right? So you can't just make things happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or even 5 years. It probably takes between 10 years and 20 years for things to really take place. And those political leaders are way gone by then. So it's interesting to see how the tariffs, he's trying to make quick changes to an infrastructure that is averse to quick changes. So the tariffs and everything, so all he's doing now, he's going to bring back Alcatraz. He's doing tariffs. Look, and he goes, look at the jobs market. The jobs are so much better than they thought they were going to be. 177,000. Oh, look, and look, the stock market is back the way it was. It was a correction area. Of course, I didn't play the stock market, but I used to, when I was in the federal government, we put like stuff in the stock market. Yeah, when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, you lose $20,000 at a pop, and then all of a sudden people go, "That's okay because you'll get it back." Wait, whoa, whoa! What about the $20,000 I lost? Oh, well, you'll get that back. No, no, I won't, because that $20,000 is lost. Even if I get $20,000 over a period of a year, 2 years, the inflation has taken that $20,000 and basically made it less than that. So he's trying. He's trying like. Have you guys read The Art of the Deal? Have you guys read the book?
No, I haven't.
I have not really been familiar with it, but I'm not
I'm,
ready
I'm about
myself. But I need to.
I'm about halfway through the book. Let me tell you something. There's 2 books you got to read to understand Trump. 2, and only 2. One is Art of the Deal, which is, I mean, it goes inside his head. You see what the guy is like, right? And the second one is Ivana's Trump book called Raising Trump. That book is absolutely the best book to understand what the Trump family is like. And I'll just, if you guys don't mind, I just wanted to raise one story that I just thought was absolutely fantastic about. First of all, Ivana Trump. By the way, Ivanka Trump's name is not Ivanka. It is Ivana. Her name is Ivana Trump. They call her Ivanka because it means little Ivana, but that's not her name. Her name is Ivana. You know, that it's almost like a nickname. You know, like instead of saying Frederick, you say Fred, right?
Right.
So, anyways, a little bit of trivia there. But so she's at she's having dinner with the Trump family. It's Fred and Mary Trump, which is the father and mother of Donald Trump. Donald's there, Fred the brother. You know, all these different people are there, and they start going around. And Fred, the father, says, "I'm going to have steak," you know, and everyone goes around. And Ivana said every single person ordered steak. It was like, what's going on here? So she says, I'll have the fish. And Fred said, you know, the father says, "Wouldn't you like the steak?" She goes, "No, Fred, I'll have the fish."
Right.
And Donald says, "Why don't you just order the steak?" She goes, "Donald, I don't want steak. I want fish." Well, the waiter by this time was kind of like, you know, looking back and forth, finally just walked away. So she got the fish, and she ate the fish. And Fred, the father, looks at her and says, "So how's the fish, Ivana?" And she goes, "Very nice, Fred. Thank you for asking." So Donald later on says to her, "Why didn't you just order the steak?" And she goes, "Because I'm not going to have your father controlling everything we do. And I'm going to show him right now that that's not going to happen." So Ivana was a strong woman. I mean, she took charge of several hotels. She did a lot of different things. Did you know she was a skier, like Olympic class skier?
Yeah, I didn't know that. And
She was
by the way,
amazing. So
you
it's
meant,
that what Trump needs is somebody like Ivana telling him, "No, Donald, you're not going to do this. Here's what you're going to do, Donald," you know, or whatever it is. He just needs somebody to tell him, "Look, you're not going to do this stuff."
well,
And
apparently, and
unfortunately,
you mentioned Fred, and apparently that is the same Fred that is the not the father, but the brother
oh
that
yeah,
has been very critical of his brother, the president, because I know that he's been highly critical of him and has come out with some things about why he doesn't need to be president and all along those lines. But just really quickly, let me give you some statistics since we're talking about Canada, and I meant to bring that up last time, but film and industry, this is from last year because I know, Chris, you're into statistics, and this is from October of last year. Toronto, 38%, and Vancouver were the most popular filming locations in Canada. And in 2021, 2022, the film and TV industry contributed over $13.73 billion to Canada's GDP. And they provide work for over 244,000 people. And because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the overproduction value fell by 4.6% in a year. And during the 1919-20 season, 122 domestic feature films were produced in Canada, and about 70% of film directors in Canada are men as opposed to women. And Canada hosts, are you ready for this, Nick? 300 film festivals in a year. So box office revenue in 2021 was only a third of the pre-pandemic level, and it is definitely seen as Hollywood North, Canada has produced many world-class actors such as Anna Paquin, who is from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Ryan Gosling, who many people know, who is from London, Ontario, Michael J. Fox, who is from Edmonton, Alberta, and Mike Myers, who produced one of the horror film classics and everything, is from Scarborough, Ontario, just to name a few. And the film director, James Cameron, was also Canadian, having been born and raised in Ontario. And they said that there's various reasons why Canada is popular as a location for Hollywood movies, and definitely that includes state-of-the-art facilities, a wide range of outstanding locations, and an experienced crew that can offer a lot of productions, to everything from indie productions to big budget movies. So, and they've definitely got cheaper production costs over there as well. When the production is allocated around $2 million, it would be a struggle to get it made in the United States. So they are able to do things very effectively.
I mean, Mark, William Shatner is from Canada.
Yes.
I mean, so you take even older stars, and I mean, William Shatner played American roles. He played an American Army captain in Judgment at Nuremberg, opposite Spencer Tracy. Well, and Marlene Dietrich. So I mean, there's a lot.
And even these films, let's just take a look at. I know Toby, when he was here on our news show, or maybe it was Economics brought it up. I think it was the news show. But these are some of the films that would be impacted by the tariffs if the tariffs had been impact when they were shot, and all along those lines. One of them would be the very classic Titanic and everything like that. So Titanic, a large part of the film Titanic, which crossed 2.1 billion, was shot in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The film, released in 1997, starred Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio. The film also featured a soundtrack by the French-Canadian singer Celine Dion. Pirates of the Caribbean, which grossed $963 million, and it starred Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom, was shot at Niagara Falls, which has been a popular location for shooting Hollywood films for a long time. And other films at Niagara Falls, which, has got the Canadian side, includes Superman 2, starring Christopher Reeves, and Niagara, starring Marilyn Monroe. Catch Me If You Can was shot in Quebec City and grossed $350 million. It starred Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio, and was directed by Steven Spielberg. Quebec City was picked because of its French look. I know you're not a big fan of the French, Chris, and everything. And Superman grossed $300 million and was shot in Calgary. This was the original film from 1978, not the remake. The film Shanghai at Noon, which is set in Nevada, was also filmed in Calgary, as was Cool Running, the film based on the true story of the Jamaican bobsled team. And the 1997 film Good Will Hunting was filmed in Toronto and grossed $225 million. So Toronto has been a popular film location with Hollywood directors for a long time because of the cheaper production rates as well as its scenery. And the 2002 film Chicago, that's right, it's called Chicago, was filmed in Toronto. So it wasn't filmed in Chicago, it was actually filmed in Toronto. So these are some of the films that would be hit by the tariffs if they were in effect at the time that they were shot.
And I think it's really important to get back to demographics. So what is the population of Canada? Don't look it up because you guys are going to be. So what do you think the population of Canada is? What would you say? Just pop it out there.
38 million, maybe?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, in fact, you're only like 200,000 off. 37.8 million, right? So it's that type of thing that people don't understand. We have 10 times the population of Canada, and a lot of people don't realize this stuff. Like they go, I asked them, I said, what is the third largest populous nation in the world? And they go, well, Malaysia. No, not Malaysia. Well, Australia. Nope, 24 million. They go, Russia. I said, no, that's about 24 million. So the third most populous nation in the world is the United States.
Right.
And that's exact. I mean, you can look it up. That's exactly right. So we, besides China and India, we are number 3 in the world for populous nations. So, I mean, it's interesting that a landmass that is probably I'd have to look it up, but probably half of what Russia is. I'd say probably a third of what Russia is. I mean, a third of what half these countries are. And people sit there and say, "Well, Europe." I said, "Well, even Europe combined has a hard time meeting U.S. population." So I
live in Europe now. So I live in Barcelona, Chris. Yeah. So the thing is, I'm pretty experienced with the European Union, which is what they call them.
Right.
The European Union has 443 million people. It is
See?
huge.
So I mean,
But oddly enough, the GDP isn't that of the United States. It's their GDP is still less than the U.S. and China, so they're third behind it, even though they have a huge population base. Ivan Whitaker wants to know how long we've been
I'd be asking
streaming.
how long we've been.
I hope she's just asking
since,
for today, not how long the network's been streaming.
I think they're
Network's
asking how long
been-
the network's been streaming.
I was looking through some of some of our historical archives today, Mark. So I was seeing a lot of them in 2020. So I know it's about 5 years. I missed the data show. I actually used to watch those shows over and over again. I don't know why, but maybe that's because I'm into data. You know,
I got to get back. I got to get back with it. You know, and I like to blame the grandkids, but to tell the truth, they're the best part of they're the best
Sure.
part of having kids is having the grandkids. They're
Right.
just a lot of fun. But
Yeah.
I mean, it really is interesting when you take a look at the GDP aspects and everything else.
Right.
And like I said, I think what's happening is that, you know, Trump is doing a lot of things, a lot of things, good, bad, whatever. He's just shoving out a lot of different things, and that's why they call him the distractor in chief. Is he just keeps throwing things, you know, against the fan, you know.
Speaking of the distractor in chief, apparently there is a popular thing that I know that Toby is very much into, but it has become even popular with another part of society because there was an article, I think it was on ABC New York, that talks about how the Cardinals, that's right, I said the Cardinals, like as in the Catholic Cardinals, are using social media ahead of the papal conclave. So I guess they are doing selfies and also letting folks know what's going on and everything like that. So this is
Wow.
a definitely new era with the Cardinals actually doing selfies and everything, when that used to be a very private event that nobody knew what the result was until after it was done and everything. But I guess they're doing a whole bunch of selfies near the Vatican and stuff like that. So what is y'all's take on this impact of social media, even in something that used to be very private?
Let me state something. First of all, I'm a Catholic.
Yeah.
But let me state something very clearly about the Pope. And I know the guy's dead, and God rest his soul, all the whole 9 yards. But he was the first one to talk about immigration, saying, "Hey, look, United States needs to, immigration is very important. We have to take all the refugees, and we have to treat them like human beings. And we have to do all those other things." And my retort to him was, you're a country. Literally, the Vatican is a sovereign, is a kind of a sovereign micronation. And my thing was, if you're so concerned about immigration, Pope, why don't you open up the basilica, put cots in there, and have the migrants go in there and and lay in there? It was never offered. Of course not, because and I hate to be very anti-Catholic because I'm not, but it's kind of like the Catholics here are trying to reach out to migrants. They're trying to do those things for immigrants. They're trying to help them out. But the Vatican was all about, we have to do this and we have to do that. And it was like, go ahead, you start. I'll tell you what, it's the old, let's get old, you go first. Let's do those things that need to be done, Mr. Pope, and get those things done at the basilica level. Open it up, put the cots in there, have the migrants go in, feed them 3 meals a day or whatever you want to do to be able to get them going and give them visas and do all the things that need to be done. But it was like, no, I'm the Pope.
But Chris, I can't let you slide on that. Oh, it was just the Catholics and everything, because that's been a complaint that several friends of mine have had about churches in general, whether they be Christian or Catholic, or then Catholicism is a form of Christianity, or whether they be Jewish or a number of others, even the mosque and everything like that, because a number of folks have been definitely complaining that they would like to see the churches open their doors, and they don't open their doors. And a lot of times they don't even give money to the folks that are in need. So I can't let you just let it slide with just the Catholic Church, because it is a problem across the country where a lot of folks are not necessarily doing what they can to help those that are lesser in lesser society.
Well, the Catholic churches in Italy and Spain are opulent. I mean, they're more like museums. If you're ever there, they're incredible. I mean, and some of it houses really historic artwork everywhere you go. So it's not like the churches in the United States, for the most part, which are modern and mundane. Here they're just opulent historical works of art. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
And some of them you never even hear of until I was over here. Then I started going to some of these places like St. Pilar in Zaragoza. That's unbelievable. It's one of the biggest places I've ever been to. But if you don't live here, you don't even know about some of the places that are here. So opening up their doors, all I can say is what the guy said in Pawn Stars, that ain't happening.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean that's yeah.
Yeah, it just isn't going to happen, because the thing is, to the odds of destroying artwork that is centuries old, literally, some of it's millennial old. They're just not going to happen. Now, if they open up doors into other dorms or stuff like that, I'm not sure if they would have a problem with it, or would they do it or not. But the immigration problem in the United States, I think it's on its way to being solved. People don't want to go there anymore. That kind of like solves the problem, when you're not welcome. By the way, they did that in Spain too here, in case you didn't know. They don't like tourists here. We got almost 90 million or more tourists come to Spain a year. So in Barcelona, where I live, 7 million people, almost the entire city size, visit this every year. And so what happens, here's what they did though. They take water pistols and they shoot the tourists with water pistols. I'm serious.
But water pistols is one of the other ways that people handle stuff. And this comes down to social media and all along those lines. But apparently in New Delhi, they're having a parliament panel that is looking at taking actions against some social media influencers and platforms, because allegedly they were working against the interests of the country. And I'm thinking that they might have been encouraging some of the attacks, like what happened at Kashmir's Pahalgam on April 22nd. So one of the quotes from the parliament in that area said, some social media influencers and social media platforms in the country seem to be working against the interests of the country, which is likely to incite violence. And I know even here we've got some people that have, some people would say January 6th was incited by and encouraged by social media, and some people would say that even Occupy, if I can go to the left, was encouraged by social media and stuff like that. So what is our take on how much regulation should there be on social media, and how would you regulate it? Because apparently that's what India's trying to do. They're trying to figure out how they're going to curtail some of these social media influencers from getting people riled up, for lack of a better term. And just really quickly on that same note, but on a sadder note, I mentioned it in the news earlier today. There was a gentleman that apparently was trying to scale, I think it was the Coliseum, and he got impaled or impaled. Sure, a lot of people were watching that and even filming it as it was happening versus trying to save him and everything like that. So
he was doing a selfie on the Roman. I saw that he's doing a selfie on the Roman Coliseum, and there's these long, bars. He got up top there and he impaled himself. From what I understand, he did survive, but it took a huge effort. And he was doing selfies and people were filming it. It was kind of gross and disgusting. But there is a problem with these selfies. Sometimes the people go overboard and they end up killing themselves doing selfies. In terms of regulating social media, I don't see why they should. In other words, right now, I think the system works. I don't know where it really doesn't work. So I don't know what India is trying to do in terms of regulating, but maybe the panel has different.
I guess they're trying to get people to not incite folks. That was even one of the things that was going on. Yeah.
Well, I think with social media,
Yeah,
I think with social media, Malcolm Gladwell did an essay several years ago. Malcolm Gladwell, The Tipping Point, Bomber Mafia. Really,
I've read his books, but not.
I know, aren't they good? Honest to God, I mean, they're amazing. David and Goliath. I mean, fantastic books. Yeah. But he wrote that the next revolution is not going to be because of social media. Social media is good for righting small wrongs. Like, somebody gets ripped off and puts it on social media, and all of a sudden social media comes in and, they get their money back because social media has decided they're going to go in and do this stuff. And he said, it just doesn't, it's not going to be that the next revolution or the next rebellion is going to be because of social media, which actually makes kind of sense when you sit back and say, yeah, social media is a major portion of media per se, but really conventional media, the conventional media itself is really much more powerful than, and they use social media as part of that. So the conventional media takes all these different information sources, information distribution, and has the ability to do so simultaneously, which makes it really, really big, that they can hit a lot of audience a lot of ways. Influencers, and basically we can call them salespeople. Why don't we just call them what they are? Influencers are salespeople. They sell things. Either they sell themselves, they sell a piece of equipment, they sell, whatever it is. That one little kid who's 8 years old, it's making $10 million a year for, he puts his stuff on toys. And I mean, that's how much he makes. I think it's like $5 million a year or something, because he goes out and he's an influencer, but he sells stuff. And that's what influencers are. They sell things, and that's what they do. And I think social media didn't sell the last election. The thing that sold the last election was literally people being, unfortunately, misinformed in some areas. And it probably, if it sold anything, it sold possibly a facade that wasn't really true, that wasn't really there. So I mean, that's what people latch onto, it seems. Conspiracy theories, those types of things, more so than actual facts. And that tends to be a problem.
But that's also a big problem with people in general, because when I listen to David Walker, he's being very rational. Okay, he's being objective, but the problem is there's no political capital for that. In other words, the Medicare and Social Security system being in trouble, but because you can push it off into the future, nobody wants to tackle the bear. So unfortunately, there's reality out there in political land that doing the right thing could be political suicide. I just don't know how else to describe it. In other words, if you tell people the truth, you basically committed political suicide. So what's going to happen? I don't know. The thing is, I really think what will happen in the next half a dozen years, they're not going to solve the Social Security problem, and we're going to get a major cut. They're going to be forced to cut benefits 20%. And people are going to scream, but the Social Security Trust Fund will have no money. That's what's going to happen. I don't see any other. I give that a 90% probability right now. And people are going, well, what happened to my Medicare and Social Security? It's gone. Why? Because it was never funded actuarially sound, and when you had time to correct it, you didn't. So. And to explain that to people right now and start doing corrective measures, there's no political willpower to do it. And so I think that's
Nick, you're a finance guy. You heard of WEP, right? The windfall elimination. Did you ever hear of WEP? WEP?
Windfall elimination of what?
Yeah, windfall. So let's say that I am a federal government worker, right?
Okay.
And I was a federal government. I wasn't, but let's say I was. Let's say I was a federal government worker, and I was under what they call the CSR, which was is it CSR? Yeah, it's the retirement. It's basically it's the original retirement for government workers. Okay,
right.
They call it CSR, but I can't remember what it stands for. Anyways, the R stands for retirement, but that's about it. So basically, you did not, the people that were under CSR originally, 84, 85, whatever it was, did not put into Social Security. In other words, they were never, that Social Security was never taken out of their paychecks.
Correct.
So when they retired at like 80% of their base pay, 80% of their pay. So then they had to go back and do their 40 quarters, their 10 years, 40 quarters of work to be able to be eligible for Social Security. Right. When they received that Social Security, there was a calculation to put in to make sure that their Social Security that they received was comparable to those people that had to put in Social Security for 70 years or whatever it was. And because of that, they didn't receive the entire Social Security that they were entitled to. So now they have the Social Security Fairness Act, which eliminates that windfall elimination process. So because of that, Now they're getting more Social Security. So you know what that does to the Social Security Trust Fund? It now decreases it even more, because now those people are going to receive more Social Security. Now, does that hurt the congressional representatives? No. Does it hurt? Does it hurt their retirement? No. And let me tell you, as I've told everybody, is that nobody believes that the House is flooding until their ankles get wet. And this is something that is very, very clear with congressional representatives. They give themselves every single year, they give themselves a pay raise. Why? Because the congressional representatives are the purse strings. So they determine what the budget's going to be. So they do whatever needs to be done to be able to get themselves that pay raise to be able to make that work. And I don't care what party they are, everybody votes for it. And the ones that don't vote for it are basically told, well, guess what? Your term is, we're not going to put as much money into your reelection campaign as we do this other person. So it's a really, really hard road to hoe.
Yeah, I see that we had his hands up, so he might have some comments about everything that we've been talking about and all along those lines. So, to tell me, what is your take on what's going on, including social influencers and influencers that are out there? I know Mr. Beast is from here, and he's considered a social media influencer. But what is your take on all this conversation that's been going on?
So, I think we're missing the boat on social media a little bit, just because at every basketball player, every football player, every chess player who's dominant out there, excuse me, allergies are killing me. But all these individuals are no different than your social media influencers, because your influencers themselves are no more than just entertainers. And because they have a following, that's how come they become salesmen, because people put money there so they can sell their product and get their product in front of eyeballs. It's no different, like I said, than any other entertainer that's out there. So I wouldn't consider them salesmen. They're still an influencer, just as any other person who has an actual following. Social media itself, there are ways to regulate it, but that comes down to not only the families themselves regulating it, individuals learning and regulating it themselves, but we can regulate it in other ways, by blocking particular sites during particular times, shutting down things, avenues for kids to actually get into that social media platform as well. This could also be done in schools, where we take away phones at particular times, not allowing kids to have their phones, because there have been studies done in terms of how social media creates a lot of anxiety within children, depression within children. Also, it affects young girls and women heavily in terms of depression. It does men as well, but it hits women even harder. Because we live in this, and this goes for everybody, we live in this fantasy on social media, and we begin to doom scroll and figure that everybody's life is better than ours. So there are ways and there are issues with social media. I disagree with the idea that the next revolution will not be done by social media. I think that the social media is the vehicle people are utilizing for communication to get their words out, and using that as an avenue to create the instances of revolution. And yes, you can use your legacy media to throw in there in terms of backing your position or wherever you're going to talk your position from, but they're using social media to push that information out, to touch base with their individuals and to grab like-minded individuals, because truthfully, we're all looking for a position of confirmation bias. Take, for instance, with all the stuff that RFK puts out. RFK talking about there being fetus debris in vaccines, which is untrue, but there are people that believe this and look for that confirmation bias and find other individuals that push this same notion. Because this person in this position says this, now I believe it because I saw it on social media. Now I can actually create a following around it. So social media is a very powerful tool, and it will be used to spark a revolution because it is a media that is used to spark that revolution in every case. But this is no more than putting flyers out, but it's just putting it bigger eyes and a bigger case.
And everything. Hey, Jacoby, just really quick, and this is for everybody, including Chris, because I kind of alluded to it earlier, but the Supreme Court in India, they have a Supreme Court as well, directed 5 social media influencers, including India's Got Latent host Samay Irani, to appear before it or face coercive action after a plea alleging that they ridiculed persons having a rare disorder, spinal muscular atrophy, and those suffering from the disability on their show. And I know sometimes whether it's comedians or others that they are given a little bit more leeway, but the court termed the influencer's conduct as damaging and demoralizing and said some serious remedial and punitive action was needed so these things don't happen again. Now that's what's going on in India, and definitely observing that the fundamental right to freedom of speech and expression is not absolute. A bench of justices, Surya Kant and in Kataswar Singh, said no one can be allowed to demean its right with rare disorders. And then we have, as you pointed out, Toby, our own president that did some things against the disabled in our society. So what is our notion of maybe people have to take some responsibility for their actions, even if they're in social media? Because that's apparently what India is trying to do.
So for me, we have to be able to understand the difference between freedom of speech and terms of service. The problem that we ran into under COVID and that we continue to run into is that people want to, they want to say freedom. If I'm taken off of YouTube, they're attacking my freedom of speech. YouTube is not a government entity. YouTube has terms of service.
Right.
Facebook, they're blocking what I'm saying. They have a terms of agreement that they deal with. So instead of, we have to be able to understand and delineate between the two, because we run into the problem that, they're taking away my freedom of speech. Particular social media. That is a terms of service issue and not a freedom of speech issue. If the government is saying that you cannot and you are not allowed to, or we're going to reprimand you and jail you, that's a freedom of speech issue, which is honestly what Trump is actually doing with with dealing with the AP, saying, well, if you don't say what we agree, what we say it is, you're not going to be in that press pool. That's a freedom of speech issue, a freedom of the press issue. If dealing with Stanford and the trying to tell Stanford what they can and cannot teach, that is a whole different legal thing. That is not a terms of service issue. So this is where we get into those troubles with those social media influencers. I'm not big on a court telling them what they can and cannot say. However, if it is leading to violence, harming individuals, and so on and so forth, that is where the court should step in. But if it is, YouTube saying, well, you cannot say these things, that's terms of service. And they should not be able to argue anything with terms of service, because that's a private entity saying this is something that we don't want you saying on our platform.
What's your take on that, Chris? And I see Kim's joined us as well, because it seems like this Indian society or society in that part of India was saying that these influencers were stepping over the boundaries by some of the things they were saying about the disabled.
So, interestingly, I went to a college called Grove City College in Pennsylvania. It's a private, basically Presbyterian-based college. It's really actually it's a very good college. Back in the 1970s, the government came in and said, you're not accepting the correct amount of minorities. And because of that, we are not going to give you, you're risking federal funding unless you take in a certain amount of minorities. Grove City responded saying, we take in people that have SATs of this. It doesn't make any difference what color they are. If they have this type of qualification, they come in. We don't even take into consideration religion. I mean, it doesn't matter what religion they are, even though we're private Presbyterian based. We still have to do. We still do what we do based on their SAT scores and whatever else they have. So the government came in and said, no, that's not good enough. We're going to stop your federal funding. And Grove City said, okay, fine, do so, but we don't care. So they did. And then they sued Grove. So Grove City not only did better, but they started to get more donations from their alumni. So they actually had J. Howard Pugh, which was gave an endowment, and they really spent their endowment wisely. So they basically did without. The government sued Grove City. Grove City went to court and went to the Supreme Court, and they called what they call the Grove City Law. It literally is a law in 1978 that says any school that is privately funded can, in fact, do what they need to do as long as they do not accept government funding. They have the same qualifications for everybody involved. That's fine, and they can do it. And Grove City still to this day flourishes. They've built new buildings, whatever else, because they decided that they were not going to accept. And I was an ROTC grad, which was, I think, the final year? I think 88 was the final year of ROTC because they accepted federal funding. So they got rid of the ROTC program. They got rid of anything having to do with government funding, and they did well. So the independence, I agree with you, Jacoby. The independence of education is very important. The independence includes accepting government funding. If you accept government funding, and this is good and bad, when you accept government funding, you accept everything that has to do with that government. So to me, it's kind of like, don't accept the government funding. This way you can go on, you can be independent. You don't have to worry about, the government coming in and saying, no, you have to do whatever you need to do. Now they're still under Title IX. They're still under all those things that they need to have, and they do well with that. So I agree. I absolutely agree with you on that, Chitovi. Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything like that. Just really quickly on those same lines, and maybe Kim, if she's still there, has some thoughts around this as well. But how far is too far and everything, even with some of the social media influencers? Because I know that Mr. Beast and others have done some different stunts, and sometimes they have done just basic travel things. Like there was, coming back to India, a travel vlogger that went on a long trip, and now he's suffering from severe respiratory infection. He claims it was the result of a 15-hour train journey, which he called one of the most unhygienic experiences in his 6 years of traveling. So he said that take the Indian sleeper, it'll be an experience. And definitely, he said, because he's a majority vlogger, that he loves India. It has warm and generous people, but that this was one of the worst trips that he had ever taken and everything like that. And apparently he's suffering from some of the consequences of the unhealthy aspects of that train and everything. So in that case, it was more the industries that would have to be in control, not the vlogger. But there have been cases where the vloggers or the influencers have done stunts that can be considered risky and everything like that. So just wanted your take on some of these risky activities. Anybody? Yeah, everybody's on mute. I don't know. Everybody's on mute. Chris, could you get off mute?
So let me try to understand what you're saying here, Mark. Just repeat one more time.
I'll do the short version. Sometimes influencers will do these like challenges, and some of the challenges are risky.
Yeah.
So what is your takes on some of these risky activities that some of the influencers try to encourage their people to get involved in?
All right. So this is, again, this is a very conservative look at this thing, right? So if a person says, okay, I'm going to put a challenge out there, lick toilet seats, which actually is a true challenge. Mm-hmm. Lick the toilet seat, and this is what we'll do. And a person licks a toilet seat. To me, that individual, there's two phrases, there's two ways of looking at this, right? It's that I have instigated you to go out there and lick a toilet seat, so I am responsible for you doing so. But then that takes away the person's really talking about free will, right? I mean, I'm not going to look at TikTok goes out and says, okay, I want you to jump off a 5-story building and, see if you survive type thing. I'm not going to jump off a 5-story building because I'm not going to survive, or there's going to be massive internal and external injuries. I'm not going to do that. If somebody does that, there's got to be a certain amount of ethics in that area where it says, it's one thing I'm not convincing you to do it. I'm saying, hey, I'm challenging you to do it. And it's like, really? So what are we, 11? I'm going to challenge you to chew the gum underneath the bleachers. I mean, cut me a break. It's a situation where somebody has free will. They can say, I'm not going to do that. And the majority of people actually say, no, I'm not going to lick a toilet seat. If somebody wants to do that, let them do it. And then they watch it and they go, oh, I can't believe they did it. Oh, wow. It's the influencers themselves, when they come up with these challenges, I think that they're putting themselves at risk of being held accountable for something that they have put out there. And so far, I haven't heard one person getting sued because they put out a challenge on TikTok. The media comes on and says, don't do that. But why should the media have to say that, Mark? Why should the media have to say, don't lick a toilet seat, don't jump off a building, don't, stab yourself with a pitchfork? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever that people actually do that stuff. It's almost something out of a novel, like something out of like some science fiction thing or Black Mirror or something, where somebody actually does those things. So,
that's crazy.
It's hard to hold somebody responsible for something they say if somebody actually does what they suggest, which is like, is action. And then there's words, it's like, what's the deal?
You told me you were going to add something to that.
The interesting thing is, this isn't a novel thing though. This is just social media has allowed more people to see it. We all grew up where, hey, smell this. It stinks. It stinks, but you're going to see if somebody's going to smell it. But we didn't have social media doing it. The cinnamon challenge has been around for decades before even social media. All these things are not new. It's just the fact that everybody wants their 5 seconds of fame now. Everybody knows if I go viral, I can make a ton of money. And that's the problem, is that, hey, before, at home, we try, Mark, I don't know if you did it when you were growing up, but you had the 2 pencils and you would try and break the other person's pencil with your pencil. So that was the big challenge. That was a big game. It was dumb, but it was something that we tried. And then there are other things that we tried just to be cool. And that's what it is. Social media has allowed an avenue for us to get more people to see it. We're going to do the cinema. I bet you can't taste. I bet you can't. But so to say how far is too far, we did it when we were young.
Yeah, and speaking of that being cool and everything, I was actually watching, speaking of social media, I was watching one of my schoolmates, Doc Rivers, and one of his Instagram posts, and it was actually about why he got the name Doc Rivers, but it was also a movie that he was part of about the whole playground aspect of basketball and the whole playground aspect of basketball. They're talking about the tennis shoes and everything. They told me they were talking about how back in the day, you would have those tennis shoes that were basically cheap. You could have like a $7 tennis shoe, but the game was very much a sharp game. And he was talking about how he'd come out there and be one of the first 3, and then it would become like a bunch of people out there basically in that war environment of the old playgrounds and everything like that. So he was sharing that knowledge and everything like that. So it was an interesting piece. He also talked about something that I hadn't thought about, which is this notion of that the Provozo East, which is where he's from, near Maywood, Illinois, should have its own story about its integration, because they were even having like the whole interracial relationship and all along those lines. And they were talking about how that's been a movie that hasn't been made that needs to be made, which is the way that the basketball team brought a racially divided community together. So it was a movie that he was suggesting should have been made that hasn't been made yet. So definitely, that just wanted to throw that out there and everything. Chris, as an older person,
Mark, you just glossed over it talking about a basketball movie that should have been made, and talk about bringing communities together in the historical context. You didn't even talk about what happened to Duke.
Right.
Remember
Yeah. Yes, that is true. The whole the secret game and everything like that. That is very important. And that has been a movie that's been made. The secret game was between the Duke medical students and the folks over there at North Carolina Central University, where North Carolina Central University won, and they had to go into a secret location in order to play that game and everything like that. So that was a very important conversation and everything. Speaking of sports sports, and speaking of UNC and basketball and Duke and everything like that, the other thing that's been in the media, and we kind of talked about it yesterday, but it's still in the media. Apparently, he's getting ready to hire a PR agent because his girlfriend cannot be his PR agent, or apparently she's not doing a good job of being his PR agent. But what is your take on Bill Belichick and what's going on with that, Chris? Because definitely, I know you've got some take on that and everything like that, but it's a whole other thing. He got his own PR agent.
You know, Jacoby, help me out here. I mean, Bill Belichick. I mean, the guy's, how old is she? 24 years old. This guy.
24.
I mean, this guy is. I mean, my wife and I both are looking at this, going, "Come on, really? That could be our granddaughter." I mean, cut me a break. I mean, Bill Belichick has the only thing that Bill Belichick had in the New England Patriots was Tom Brady. The minute Tom Brady left, and the minute he took his people with him, Gronk and the rest of them, that whole club went, it was done for Belichick, and he knew he had to do something, do something with his life. So then he went to UNC. I think this whole thing with his girlfriend / fiance / wife, well, whatever she is at this point in time. She's 24 years old, Mark. I mean,
Yep.
24 years old. I mean, come on. And the guy wants to get her job. I don't know. It just brings me back to very powerful men that get these. That isn't the right word. That I don't know. That has women that they want to get a job for. So they romance them, and then they end up trying to get jobs for them down the run. I mean, I don't think that she's the best qualified for the PR job in any case. But yeah, I mean, that's just me.
What's your take, Jacoby?
Yeah, really, Jacoby, help me out here, man.
I mean, for me, it's there. Let them do them. It's not going to affect me one way or the other. I mean, I'm curious about what he's going to bring to Carolina in terms of, because you're right. I mean, Tom Brady's success was built off of Bill Belichick's system. Bill Belichick's system was built off of Tom Brady's success. So is he going to be able to bring that system to Carolina and actually do that system at Carolina? Because he's going to have to run a 2 tight end system with 2 wideouts and actually a quarterback that's going to have to make a quick decision. Well, actually, not even a quick decision. You're going to have a great line to deal with that setup. But he's coming to Carolina. It depends on the NIL, because NIL has really changed the college game.
Yeah.
And that is where the big story is. Because if you look at where the money's going, this is why, Kirby Smart came out talking about the NIL the other day, complaining about it. This is why Nick Saban dropped out of the game, because of the NIL. Same, what's his name at University of Miami, who the coach been there forever, and then he drops out because NIL couldn't deal with it. It's just going to change the game. It's a whole new world.
Hey, Jacoby, what do you think? What do you think about Belichick having get Tom Brady to come in and be the quarterback coach? What would you think about? What would you think about that? I mean, if he brought in like Gronk to be the whiteout coach, I mean, what would you think about that mafia type? I shouldn't say mafia because I'm Italian, so I shouldn't even say it. A conspiracy theory type thing where he brings in all his old guys, pays them big bucks, 20 million or 30 million or whatever it is, to come in and do coaching in those different areas. What would you think about that? Something like that.
So I think it would be smart for him to grab somebody who can actually help him, but for him to bring out like a Tom Brady to be the quarterback's coach, I mean, yeah, it'd be interesting. I don't think Tom Brady can help him as a coach, because I don't think, just like Peyton Manning would suck as a coach. And I always thought Peyton Manning was a much better quarterback than Tom Brady, because Tom Brady was a system. Peyton was part of a system. Peyton Manning was that system. He just knew where to go with the ball and could move people around. Peyton Manning was the last true signal caller at the line.
That's
Peyton
true.
Manning
Hey,
was he was the greatest system quarterback.
so
So
you mentioned Nick Saban and everything, and Nick Saban apparently had reached out to the current president Trump because he's upset about NIL and he wants the NIL. He wants an executive order to curtail the NIL. So I just wondered, do you think that this is actually going to happen? Because that actually happened over the weekend as well. When Nick Saban approached Trump about doing a executive order around the NIL.
That's 148 executive orders now. There you go. That's
yeah, I don't think Trump should not be dealing with the NIL. It is not. There's not work on lowering prices. Should have absolutely nothing to do with the NIL. However, he'll try and jump into the conversation with the NIL because he wants to be in everything. Supposedly, he's trying to get the NFL to put the draft in Washington now. Why? It doesn't matter.
He wants a little bit of everything. Just really quickly, this is for both of you because I did watch the game yesterday. And speaking of legends, and this is somewhat media, but it's also sports and everything like that. But we're going to have a 6-7 on tomorrow because Stephen Curry, with the help of Buddy Hield, who's from the Bahamas, basically went and got the game from Houston, even though Houston did have the series. So what is your take on Stephen Curry and his legacy, and even Draymond Green, who apparently can't keep himself quiet, but he does manage to play some effective defense and everything. So what is your take on this 6-7 match, and both primarily because it's the media show, Stephen Curry's legacy?
I like Stephen Curry. I like him. I mean, he's a likable guy. He's a likable person. He's a good player. He's not excessively tall. He's not, he doesn't have that. He has just a lot of agility. He's just a good overall sensible player. Consistent. He's very consistent.
He did something very cool at the end of the, and I want to hear your thoughts, Joey, but he did something very cool at the end of his interview, which is he gave a shout out. I'm not sure which of his aunts it is, but his aunt got a degree. I think it's a master's or PhD. And as he was walking off, he shouted out his aunt for getting that degree. So it was like one of those family moments.
Steph Curry is a good guy. In terms of his basketball legacy, truthfully, he's going to be underrated due to his size. However, if you were to rate him correctly, he should be in that top 10 list. He's the best shooter that has ever played basketball. He will be probably more than 1,000 points or 1,000 3-point shots over the next person who's Ray Allen right now. James Harden may catch Ray Allen. Trae Young may catch Ray Allen, but nobody's going to catch Steph Curry for a very long time because of the amount of threes that he takes and the ability to make those threes, especially at the high percentage that he makes them. And for example, he hit, I think it was another year of 300 plus threes this year. So his legacy, it's already set in stone. He's got to be in the top 10 in terms of players. At his position, he could be arguably number one. Draymond Green, I think, is due to his flagrant fouls and stuff. He's and his actual point output, because truthfully, as basketball fans, we love seeing scoring. Draymond Green doesn't score. Draymond Green is he's easily another top 30 player, even though he doesn't score. He's a very reminiscent of Dennis Rodman, but he actually is better than Dennis Rodman because he can actually take threes and actually score the game and actually navigate as a point guard or a point forward, which is what he plays. And he can actually guard every position. So I think Draymond Green's legacy is set in stone. I think Steph Curry's legacy is set in stone. However, I don't think they're going to win the next series because Ant-Man or Anthony Edwards has his team playing at a top level. The only thing that may hurt the Minnesota Timberwolves right now is they've sat for such a long time. And the age on the Golden State Warriors may catch them because Jimmy Butler's phenomenal. Jimmy Butler's another top 30 player, but he's got old legs. He's injured. The youth on that team just isn't consistent. But it's going to be an interesting series. I think it's going to go at least 6.
I think it's going to go at least 6. It'll be a tight conference and a tight match and everything like that. Just really quickly, Jacoby, just on that same level, and then we'll get ready to end this show and everything like that. But one of the other things that Doc Rivers said as I was scanning the stuff on the line is that he thought that Rajon Rondo would never be a coach because he didn't have the personality to be a coach and everything like that. So do you think that Rajon could ever get into coaching because he thought he was a great guard, but he didn't have the personality for coaching? And there are others that don't have the personality for coaching either. So I just wondered, do you think that he is right in that assessment?
I mean, I think two things. I think Rondo wouldn't be a great pro coach. He'd be a good maybe high school coach, a talent developer, because he has that ability to see things as a point guard the way he played. Doc Rivers is an overrated coach. I hate to say it. I love Doc, but he's overrated, and he should never have taken the Milwaukee position because I think his coaching style is older and not up to date with the way the game is played today. And I think the way that he could have handled Damian Lillard, the whole crew there with Giannis and everything, he came in and that defense, yeah, sure, it picked up a little bit, but it already was there. Their offense dropped off a cliff. And so that's why I think Doc Rivers, he should never have been there, even though Giannis wanted him there. I don't think Doc is going to win another championship just because his coaching style doesn't match today's game and he's not changing it fast enough.
Yeah, and I was actually surprised, even though he is a fellow Marquette graduate and everything like that, that he is actually on the first ballot for the 2025 class of the Hall of Fame. And I'm feeling like he got one championship as a coach, and I don't think he's any as a player, but he is a first-time balloteer and everything. But I don't think that he'll get there. I think he's got to get at least a couple more championships, and but he did have the media background as well, so he may get there eventually. But I don't think he'll get there the first time around.
The reason he's on that ballot at all is because he was able to manage Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett, and they got one championship, which they should have had more if they were able to keep them. Well, if he was able to adjust some coaching, because when he was actually supposed to be able to keep up with the Miami Heat at the time, but he couldn't keep up with the Miami Heat because he wasn't able to navigate the transition from the old ways to the new ways.
Yep, I agree with you on that, but it'll be interesting. We got a lot of games going, and of course, we've got hockey because we've got the Canes will be playing the Capitals on Tuesday, so they'll get their first game up there on Tuesday, and we'll see how they do. I hope they make it to the next round because I'd like to see a Stanley Cup come back here. I know we've got one, but it'd be nice to get two and everything like that. But I know the play will start out of state, out of state in DC on Tuesday night. So we'll see what happens in that one. And then I think that Cleveland-Indiana series is going to be really interesting as well, as Indiana stole the game after they beat Milwaukee. So they're already up as well. So I think Indiana's got a good chance of advancing in that series. So that will be interesting to see now that we're down to 4 teams on both sides in the NBA. And I guess it's 4 teams on both sides in the NHL as well. You can correct me if I'm wrong or right. I'm not sure what we are.
Yep, we're in the Final Four on all.
Okay.
Cool. The Final Four, we're technically in the 8, right. But it's 4 for each conference.
That's what I meant, the Final Four for each conference.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to end the media show. You got any pick for what Carolina's going to do in their next round before we get out of here and everything? Because I know the Capitals are tough, but I know that the Canes are tough as well. So any idea what's going to go on in that series?
Just watch the game. Yeah, I'm not picking. That's a jinx.
Yep, don't make the jinx. So we'll get out of here with media and we'll see what goes on these various games. I was glad to see Indiana win that first game, but they still got a tough match against Cleveland because that series might go to 7 or 6 as well.
Yep, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting series.
Yeah, definitely. So we get ready to get out of media. I know they're doing timeshares right now. We've got some other programming coming on later on this evening. So y'all have a good one, and I'll see you all on the World Edition on tomorrow, on Tuesday, May 6th, and everything like that. And I know some folks might be going out there getting their tequila or whatever they're getting to celebrate Cinco de Mayo. But right now, let's get on out of here, and we'll turn you over to the timeshares.